Okay, so do you personally trust authority less now, with greater access to social media and just,
I think in the past, our views, I think, were formed by the sort of national news, national broadcasting systems like, ABC or whatever, and the newspapers, the national papers.
Yeah.
And now, of course, we've got a great deal more information, and a lot of people often say, "Well, this is great," that people have got many sources of information and so
Yes.
on. And I suppose in a democratic society, you want people to be well informed, to know exactly what's going on. And in a way, it's this sort of post-truth thing is almost an outcome of the democratic system that has evolved over the decades. I think that in an open society, everybody sort of thinks along the same lines. The chairman or whatever, they tell you what the picture is, and everybody agrees to go along because it's a totalitarian society and nobody would dare disagree.
Yes.
Here in the West, people are encouraged to disagree, and then they're looking around for various, random sources of information, and quite often. So in a way, it's almost a mixed blessing, this post-truth thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Not much of a blessing, but something which I think is going to be very hard to eradicate without us becoming a totalitarian state with one version of what's going on.
Yeah.
But you see, I think that back in the 40s and 50s, which is a time I can remember, the government was an authority, and I don't think, although we like to think of them as being democracies then,
Yeah.
I don't think they were as democratic as they are now. I don't think people had as much say. You think of all of these, think of the rights movements that have been going on over recent, 20 years, the rights of this, that and the other. This is something which has come well post-war. And back in the old days, people tended to just sort of accept status quo. This is what we have to believe and we do, and so on. And so authority, it was respected. I think it was a compass as well. It was a way that you could fit in, and there were certain sort of rules and standards and so forth. Now it's so open and free for you to think in whatever direction you want.
Yes.
And I guess that must be a great sort of opportunity for people who want to get in and sort of muddy the waters.
Yes.
They can't do it in, say, China or North Korea. They can't muddy the waters.
Yes.
But in an open society, it's almost a playground for opinion formers and misinformers and so on.
So what do you think we've got to fear most from post-truth?
Post-truth.
Is that what you're talking about there, that muddying of the waters, that kind of deliberate manipulation? Is that
I think it's extreme relativism, I think.
Yes.
That nobody knows what's right or wrong, as I mentioned at the beginning.
Yeah.
And nobody is right or wrong. Oh, also want to mention those two sort of creatures that have emerged over the last 20, 30 years.
Yeah.
Thatcher years for us.
Yes.
In the UK. The spin doctor.
Ah, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
These people who can take certain facts but maneuver them in such a way that they're more, palatable.
I think that's true. I think the whole spin doctor thing was sort of like early on in the beginning of this post-truth thing, wasn't it?
But it was. You take Iraq, for example. The supposed truth was that Saddam Hussein had all these terrible mass weapons of mass destruction. Turns out it wasn't true. And yet we were fed this as a fact.
Yes.
And on the whole, I think people went along with it. They were furious later when they found that it wasn't a fact.
Which is interesting though, because, you know, based on my reading, it seems like one of the things about post-truth is that people aren't furious anymore, like people don't care.
They don't.
Like if people find that things are not true, it sort of doesn't affect their voting or anything. You know, like they don't then go, oh well, we're not voting for them and have a big turnaround. It just doesn't seem to matter.
Well, I think that's another thing. I think that people are beginning to think that politicians don't make any difference.
Yeah.
And then you get onto all kinds of things, don't you? Like the big corporations.
Yeah.
Now that's another one. You see, the spin doctor and the lobbyist. And I think that is another sort of thorn in the side for us. I think. We know that there are very wealthy people and wealthy corporations who have very privileged access to our politicians and ministers.
Yes.
And very often you think, well, did we vote for that? Or was that just somebody buying? I mean, perhaps it would be something like the gun lobby in America. What do Americans think about guns all over the place?
Yeah.
Got a feeling that many of them don't like it.
Yeah.
But the government has got to get down on its knees to the gun lobby, and I think that there are probably many examples here as well in Australia, where governments have just simply got to take account of what Apple or Google want and so forth.
Yes.
I mean, you take the taxation, for example, you know, the way they're sort of messing around with their tax and losing money and whatnot. They can get away with these things, we can't, and so on. That's drifting off, maybe, a little bit from post-truth. But I think when it comes down to authority, I think you have to trust your leaders. I think that, you know, that it's a fair, level playing field. And when you feel that it isn't, and other people are, you know, taking advantage of the system,
Yes.
then yes, you become disillusioned and say, well, why bother to vote? It's not going to make
Yes.
going to make any difference.
So with all that in mind, what do you think that we have most to fear from post-truth?
God, it's something I don't think I've thought about really. Fear from post-truth. I'm not sure I fear it because I think it'll pass.
Okay.
I still think that we're going through a phase, you know, because I've seen these phases before, where it's on everybody's lips, and the press are obsessed with this thing, whatever it is, passes.
Yeah.
And I think I indicated earlier that I think there's always been something of post-truth in politics and in life.
Yes.
But at the moment, it's very, very much the thing you're talking about. So, fear, I think that my fear probably would be we're seeing a rising of extreme right-wing and nationalism and so forth. And I think these are people who are trying to sort of throw down an anchor somewhere. And say we're not going to go with the flow, wherever that goes. We are this, you know, we are this, and so I think that this sort of nationalism that's sweeping right across the world is people who feel lost, and they don't like relativism. They don't like to be told that you're nothing special just because you're Australian. No, you know. And they like to say, no, I am. And so they're starting to try to find sort of dry land, really, that can stand on. And so I think what we have to fear is nationalism and the rise of, you know, extremism of one kind or another.
And what about to gain? Do you think we have anything to gain from it?
From
post-truth.
Post-truth. Can't imagine there's anything to gain. As I said, I think it's something that comes along with extreme democracy, and maybe Churchill once said 5 minutes conversation with the average voter would make you doubt the idea of democracy.
Wow.
He was good at that sort of thing,
Yeah.
wasn't he? Yeah. So I think what I'd fear, despite my comments on right-wing politics and movements, it would be this idea that one opinion is as good as another, and I don't think that's true.
Okay.
Mm.
And what do you think that we could do to make a post-truth world better?
Oh God.
You don't have.
Education.
Yes, that's what comes up a lot. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Education, and to encourage young people not to believe everything they read or hear and so forth. And I think particularly when it comes to the internet, don't believe everything you see there. I think if it was possible to expose the fact that a lot of this stuff is rubbish,
Yeah.
and then to make people more critical, maybe they need to be more critical.
Yes, which you can also teach, can't you?
You can
How
teach
to-
that,
how
and
to-
maybe that is the antidote actually, a critical mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is my last question, which is, can you give me an example of one thing that is true for you?
One thing that's true for me.
Yeah.
Well, as I said before, early on when I mentioned, that the wall is white and so forth, there are many countless numbers of truths of that kind, or facts really, and a fact is something different from a truth. It's very hard to say exactly what a truth is. It's when you find that a certain claim that's made is verified by the evidence.
Yes.
And so evidence is important, I think.
Yeah.
So what would I really believe? A truth that I really believe. I think the only one I can think of at the moment is that I'm going to die.
Yeah.
But apart from that, there's not a heck of a lot.
Well, that might. Who knows? Maybe that is the only actual total truth.
Yeah.
All right. Well, on that note,
Cheerful note.
thank you for your time.
All right. Okay. Welcome.
And
Okay.
that's all. Thank you.
Have I gone? I don't want to say anything